I want to welcome everybody to the Town Council and Planning Commission for the public hearings and regular meeting for the Planning Commission. Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Welcome everybody to the December 6th Town Council Planning Commission public hearing. Can I get a Town Council roll call? Buckles here.
Holloway, present.
Grossman present.
O'Brien, present.
Holder present. Let it be known that Vice Mayor Bennett is out of time for work this evening.
I'd like to get a roll call from the Planning Commission.
Grossman present.
Strube present.
McCoy present.
Holloway present.
Buda present.
Let it be shown that we have a quorum. Would everybody please rise for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United
States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public hearings, joint public hearing to receive comment on the recommendation and adoption of the proposed revisions to the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is a guide for future development in the town of Cape Charles. It outlines where the town and its residents are at the time of its creation, where they want to go in the future, and the steps it will take to get there. This document, upon adoption by the town council, will update and supersede the previous comprehensive plan adopted in 2009 and amended in 2016. The comprehensive plan has been updated in the categories of housing, economy, transportation, community facilities and services, environment, and land use, which includes proposed revisions to the future land use map and the accompanying future land use categories, which will be used to make future changes to the town's zoning map. The comprehensive plan document does contain an updated zoning map that reflects all zoning map amendments approved by Town Council between July 10th, 2008, when the zoning map was last adopted, through July 21st, 2022, when the most recent zoning map amendment was approved. The zoning map is included and requested to be ratified only as a representation of previously approved actions of the Town Council for zoning map amendments. There are no proposed zoning map amendments reflected or included on the zoning map. Okay, at this time, I'd like to introduce the town's contractor for the comprehensive plan update from Summit Engineering and Design, Ann Darby, Mike Stafor, and Noah Foster. Ms. Darby.
Hi, everyone, members of the commission and town council, thank you so much for having us this evening. Again, it's a beautiful night in Cape Charles, and we're really happy to be here to present the final plan and to have the public hearing. Oh, can everyone hear me? Okay, great, thank you. I'm going to give you an overview. Mr. Strand gave you an overview. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, and if you have any questions before the public hearing, we're happy to answer them. Again, the team that's been working with Michael and Noah right here, they've been working hard on updating the plan, and I will just to reiterate for the comprehensive planning process, this was started in 2019 by many of you here. It started pre-pandemic, which was feels like another world at this point, but the survey and initial public meetings were held. The Planning Commission worked very hard on these documents and the different chapters. And then last January, we came in, or last December, we signed a contract. But January, we started when we realized that you needed someone else to just bring it all together, update the data, and make the document look cohesive with one voice. So you'll see this document, but for the most part, it is your recommendations, your future land use map, all of this that has been worked on so hard by all of you. I do just want to do a little bit of an overview in addition to what Mr. Stram said about what a comprehensive plan is, again, we establish where we are, and that's demographic. That's so we don't have a subjective understanding. All humans have a subjective understanding of where we live. The data helps us have an objective understanding. We decide as a community where you want to be, and then the document really are the steps that it takes to get there. It's a visionary document. It's not financially constrained, so there are a lot of recommendations. It doesn't mean that the council and the planning commission later can prioritize as funding becomes available, so don't worry if one thing seems, sort of we hear the phrase pie in the sky a lot, but if one thing seems pie in the sky, that's okay. And then it has deep dives into the housing, transportation, environment, and land use. We have two maps here, which Katie asked me to just make sure that we're all on the same page with. Future land use is really I like to call it the hub of the spoke, the hub of the wheel that is the plan. So really everything focuses and revolves around the future land use map. Zoning, as you know, and I can't remember if I used the braces analogy with y'all the first night, but basically if you envision a straight smile, if you want to have a straight smile, that's your vision. Really the zoning is your braces. So you figure out where you want to go. This is actually just the braces that take. So this is a law, the zoning is a law, and the future land use is a goal for what you want the land use to look like. Again, started in 2019. COVID really disrupted so much. You're not alone in that. Many public processes were disrupted. And then you did a lot of work up to 2022, the beginning of this year. And then we used an iterative process to come back. First, we updated all of the demographics and statistics that are included in the existing conditions in the beginning of the document. So that's, how many people live here, what are the ages, what are the demographic makeup, et cetera. And we brought them back to you. I'm telling you all, I think things that every one of you know, because I've seen your faces before. You've all been part of this process. So we have draft vision and goals. Then we had work sessions, more joint planning commission and town council work sessions, additional public feedback in October, another work session in October to bring all of the public comments and all planning commission and town council comments. Those have all been incorporated into the final draft, which came out at the end of November, which I believe that you've all seen at this point. So tonight we'll have the joint public hearing, which is an open forum for anybody who wishes to speak on the record, can speak about this document. And then ideally planning commission will make a recommendation to town council and they'll take action later this month. We'll then start the zoning ordinance update, which we've actually already started, but to go ahead and implement the plan. Again, this is more reiteration, but to go into all of this plan, we've reviewed all other documents, previous documents, the strategic plan, the previous comprehensive plan. Once we create this plan, it will inform the update of the zoning ordinance. It will also be, Cape Charles uses the strategic plan very well. I would say, and it's an exemplary example of how a town can use a strategic plan to every year prioritize some of the recommendations in the comprehensive plan and use that as a document that you can wrap your hands around to try to implement some of the recommendations. There's a lot of maps. There are a lot of maps. I'm sure you've looked in them and seen these are just two of the maps. There are soil maps. There are transportation maps. There's reviewing of previous work, what's happening, the plans at the planning district commission level, at the state level. So this plan is really dovetailed with VDOT's efforts, again, the region's efforts. We use census information. We also use Esri business analyst information. We use, there are several sources of information. The census, the decennial census, and the American Community Survey are the two predominant data sets. Again, we tried to, in addition to updating it, we tried to make sure that all of the information in the comprehensive plan is very easy to understand. I say all the time, we really try to design a document with 3 readers in mind. There's a thorough reader, and they're fairly few and far between. I bet we have most of the thorough readers in this room this evening. We have people who just skim, and then we have people that do some combination of the two. That's looking at graphics, pictures, title, or subtitles, and then scanning. So we make sure that when we design a document, each one of those 3 readers is met where you are, and we give you the information that you need. Again, goals and objectives, that's really the steps. If you think of you're here, you want to get there, these are literally your steps that if you take all of these steps or most of these steps, you will achieve the vision that you have as a town. The future land use map, as you see printed out here, each of these colors corresponds to categories. They're pretty vague categories. They have some structure around them, but then that's another conversation when you talk about zoning, creating the zoning districts, and actually putting those braces on. This is the first step, though, the future land use map, and it is reflective of the vision that the town has as a whole. I'm just repeating what Mr. Stram said again, that it's divided into different sections. There are recommendations, goals, and objectives that you'll find in more than one section. That's just because there are always going to be connections between land use and transportation, between all of these, between land use, community facilities, environment, all of it. There's been a lot of public input through the process. Again, I suspect that the people who have been the most involved are the people in this room, which is wonderful. The image you actually see on the back here is just a literal image of the matrix, the spreadsheet that Katie actually compiled very laboriously with every single comment and every single change that needed to be made. So if you made a comment, if you submitted it via email or had a conversation, any of that, it ended up in that spreadsheet and the change was made in the document. So the document that we have before us this evening, it should be reflective of all of the comments that you've made, a typo you caught, or something that seemed egregious, or changes to the maps, all of that is reflected in this document. So the next step are to hear comments this evening. Again, the Planning Commission to make a recommendation. If there are just minor changes, which because we've listened to all of the comments, I'm hoping that there are just minor changes, then that will go again later this month to Town Council for adoption. If there are substantive changes, then we'll determine the schedule at that time. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But for the most part, if there are just non-substantive, small changes, small map changes, etc., then we will proceed on schedule. And that's it. If you have questions, I think you probably all know Katie's email address. And thank you really very much for being part of this process. It's a great pleasure for us to be able to come in and get to know Kate Charles. We just, before the meeting, took our last walk on the pier, and it's a little bit bittersweet, but we thank you very much. We've been really happy to be part of your process.
Last for the year.
Last for the year. We're still here for the zoning ordinance, and we're still here, but it was still a little bittersweet. I will say. So, do you have questions for me right now?
I'd just like one clarification. You had mentioned the comment table and the fact that all resolution was placed into the comp plan. Really, we looked at each of those responses, and in some cases, we had conflicting inputs. I want this, no, I want that, and we, as a group, decided how we were going to address that. So I don't want people to say, oh, every one of my questions needed to be addressed and addressed.
That's an important clarification. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you, Ms. Darby. So now we will open this to public comment. As a reminder, for those that are speaking personally, you have 3 minutes. 3 minutes. And you need to state your name and your address. So first is L.D. Davis.
Thank you, council members and planning commissioners, for this opportunity to comment. I live at the corner of Randolph and Peach. I frequently refer to it as Hollywood and Vine, being as it is one of the busiest intersections in town. I am concerned about the potential change to corner properties on the south side of Randolph. Changing them from residential to a mix of residential and commercial becomes problematic. The historic district would lose its charm for guests and for residents if these changes are made to one of its major thoroughfares. Adding the potential for additional commercial property use on the second widest street in town is a recipe for disaster. Randolph, cannot handle the parking needs of the existing residents, much less the addition of potential commercial establishments. Please spend your valuable time working on solving existing problems. Please vote no to the expansion of commercial properties from Mason to Randolph Corners. Gentlemen, once the toothpaste is out of the tube, it doesn't go back in again. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Next is Bill Bridgeforth.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We live at the corner of Randolph and Peach, better known as the Halloween House. My only concern, and I really applaud what you've done with this town. We've been here 9 years. You've done a great job. You've got business here. And we do appreciate that because it keeps those businesses open during the winter when our vacation rental people leave. And thank you, Katie, for educating me today on this. The only thing I'd like to say is keep Randolph residential, if you don't mind. And the reason I ask this is once you set this precedent of being commercial, and Katie explained to me, example, the gentleman across the street from us wants to turn his property into commercial. So once this new zoning is in effect, it's very easy for him to do that. He still has to go through the application, go through the steps, but it's not as hard. If it stayed residential, then he'd have a problem. We just would like Randolph to be residential. I know that Strawberry Street is commercial. It's been that way. Fig, commercial. And it's wonderful when you drive in town. You look at the real estate office, it's cool with the fountain. In the winter, it's frozen. We just need more residential. We have 3 houses on Randolph, one across the street from me, one on the corner, and the next one is the blue one. And the blue one's being renovated, thank God. So if you zone this commercial, the duplex on the corner, somebody could come in and say, well, let's just put offices in here. We can provide parking in the back. Here again, we've lost another residence. We're just trying to keep, and when you drive into Cape Charles, you come in on Randolph. So all the houses have been really worked on. We're trying to improve it. We just would like to keep the residential section, south side of Randolph, just leave it residential for us. Otherwise, I applaud everything you've done. Done a great job, and thank you.
Thank you. Joe Farrer.
Joe Fair, 114 Peach Street. And again, I just want to reiterate what Bill Bridgeforth said. Thank you very much for your time. Having served on the Historic Review Board for 6 years, I appreciate the time and effort that you folks spend. So regarding the future land use map and the zoning changes that map may initiate, I also would like to suggest that you keep the corner lots on Randolph that are on the north side of the block between Mason and Randolph, so the south side of Randolph, to keep them in their current zoning designation. I realize that some are currently zoned commercial or commercial residential as you get down toward the beach. Obviously, Fig Street is, but that group in between, if you could keep that in its current zoning designation and do not extend commercial zoning to those lots, that would be great. If a property owner wishes to upzone their property to commercial or to a C designation, there is a means to do so. But including that in a future land use map and potential future zoning changes would kind of allow this presumptively, thus lowering the bar at the detriment or to the detriment of adjoining property owners. So again, just please consider removing the corner lots fronting Randolph from the zoning classification, the C designation, and keep them residential as is their current state. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nancy Perry.
Hi, I'm Nancy Perry. I live at 332 Randolph Avenue, and I am a fairly new permanent resident to Cape Charles. I retired last year from city government in Portsmouth, where I spent 20 years, and have always wanted to move here, and I feel like I'm in heaven. I agree with the previous speakers. I applaud the Planning Commission and the Town Council for everything they've done to be inclusive in looking at your comprehensive plan. My one exception to this is the desire to rezone the corner lots on the south side to mixed use. I too want to keep them as residential. Randolph is a gateway when you come into town. And once you make the changes, for me, it's like taking a pebble and throwing it into a pond. And there's a ripple effect. And so while nothing's going to change on Randolph next week, next month, maybe 5 years, but by the end of the plan, Randolph can be changed significantly, because once you change the corner lots, what keeps other homeowners in the interior lots from coming and wanting their land rezoned as well. So I applaud you on what you've done, but I hope that tonight you will either table this recommendation until you can look at it further, or that you approve the plan without the rezoning of Randolph. And I also think the way it was placed in the plan, you had to really go through it and really get to the map before you understood what was happening. And I'm not sure that the property owners as a whole understand what's happening on Randolph. And I wish that could have been a little bit more transparent. Thank you.
Thank you. We had two people that wrote in.
This one is from the Historic District Civic League. Their comments are as follows. The Cape Charles Historic District Civic League conducted a review of the Town of Cape Charles Comprehensive Plan at the monthly meeting on November 28th, 2022. The Civic League commends the professionalism that went into the preparation of the comprehensive plan. The Civic League review identified the following incompatibility with the entrance corridor into the historic district. On page 64 of the comprehensive plan, under the transportation chapter, there is a reference to the Accomack Northampton Planning District Commission Regional Long Range Transportation Plan. One of the projects cited is to perform a study to assess need and operations for roundabout at the intersection of VA 184, which is Randolph Avenue, at Fig Street. 2, a roundabout at this intersection seems to be incompatible with a town council resolution requesting VDOT to install marked crossways to enable those on foot or in wheelchairs a safe way to cross those streets to get to or from Rayfield's Pharmacy. And 3, we recommend that the study be expedited and that the scope of the study be expanded to study ways to accommodate crosswalks while facilitating vehicular throughput at this intersection. The second comment is from Cynthia Wood-Mancies. She gave me her address. She is at 119 Peach Street. Since I'll be unable to attend, I've submitted these written comments for your consideration. I have followed with interest the process the town has undertaken to update the vision and governing documents, namely the comprehensive plan, historic district guidelines, and zoning text amendments. I would like to thank the town staff and our elected officials who have taken part in this tedious and laborious process. This type of process is often a thankless task, but the upkeep of these documents is essential for communicating the town's vision for the future while offering critical guidance for the growth and maintenance of our historically designated town. I particularly appreciate the systematic methodology that was used by the various stakeholders to review, compare, and revise these documents. Thank you to all who have been involved in this effort. Within the updated comprehensive plan, I have noted a revision to the future land use map, land use designations sections, which contemplates a historic district mixed use designation for the properties located on the blocks between Mason and Randolph Avenues. I am assuming these blocks were identified as areas that can serve as transitions from the largely commercial activity of Mason Avenue to predominantly residential activity on Randolph Avenue. From my read of the draft plan, this expanded historic district mixed-use corridor will include the properties on the south corners of Randolph Avenue. I think identifying this corridor for mixed use is fine and follows acceptable urban-suburban planning standards, but I also think there should be some clarification around the properties in this corridor that face Randolph Avenue. Because the majority of Randolph Avenue is zoned residential and is to remain so, it could be potentially awkward to have mixed-use properties on every corner of the south side of the avenue. Aesthetically, it could lead to a patchwork look that has a mixture of commercial and residential buildings and all the specifics that come with each type of property. Practically, it could lead to additional traffic, a greater need for parking, and the diminishment of currently available parking when business owners find the need for loading zones and handicap parking on Randolph Avenue. Additionally, Randolph Avenue is a natural extension of the entry corridor into Cape Charles and is regularly used by our first responders as the main point of ingress and egress to the town. Avoiding the spillover of commercial activity onto Randolph Avenue will help keep this thoroughfare as a clean path for emergency personnel. It is this aspect of the comprehensive plan that may be in need of further address. I would respectfully ask the Planning Commission to consider excluding the properties that face Randolph Avenue from the mixed-use corridor in support of this idea. I believe there is a reasonable argument that the properties on Randolph currently zoned residential should remain so in order to protect the historically residential nature of the street. This minor alteration to the newly expanded historic district mixed-use corridor would not necessarily preclude a property owner from applying for an appropriate zoning exception, but would clearly signal the desire of the town to retain the residential nature of Randolph Avenue. I appreciate the opportunity to address the Planning Commission with my concerns, and thank you for your work on these important matters. And then lastly, from Robert Supa of 112 Peach Street. I live on the northeast corner of Peach and Randolph, probably the busiest intersection in the town. It's a major shortcut to Mason Avenue from Randolph, it seems. Anytime I look south, I can predict the following. One, there will be a mass of vehicles parked in the middle of the street, some facing east, some facing west, both of which adds to the congested nature of the street. Two, there will be vehicles and golf carts driving in the wrong direction between Randolph and Mason, causing the intersection to become clogged, usually when people are trying to walk across the street. Three, there will be delivery trucks of all sizes at all times of the day and evening, and further complicating the already chaotic scene. And four, families with little children cross the street, wondering if the vehicles approaching them in a hurry to get to the two restaurants or the convenience store, if they will actually stop for them while they are in the middle of the street. I have seen this happen many times, and it still scares me. This is just 4 examples of the problems on the border of the commercial zone and the residential zone. Moving the commercial zone further north to include properties on the corners of Randolph Avenue is, in my mind, an idea I do not support. Randolph Avenue, historically speaking, is a residential street and should remain that way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we close public hearing for the comp plan.
Second.
All right, we have any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I make a motion that we close public hearing. I'd like to ask for a motion to close public hearing for town council. Second.
So moved.
All right, favor? Aye. Opposed? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Wait a second.
We got more.
We got,
3 components.
We got
components.
We got 3 hearings. We got 2 hearings, right? Yeah, we got 2 hearings.
so the second public hearing, B, is a joint public hearing to receive comments on the reaffirmation of the historic district overlay map and to amend Cape Charles zoning ordinance, section 8.3, inventory of landmarks and contributing properties established, to include a new paragraph describing the historic district overlay area. I'm not going to read through this, but it's on several maps, and it's in the comp plan. It's on back there of what includes the historic district overlay.
If I may, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
We have included this because, again, through the process of updating our comprehensive plan, as we try to produce our records for inclusion, we realized our official records were a little inadequate in information. So while we knew this had been adopted, it had actually been provided to the state. The state had this map on file. Unfortunately, I could not produce the actual minutes from the town council records to verify that. So we then went through the process and presented it during our work sessions this fall, verifying that these are our bounds, having everybody look at it again. The only change is we are now looking to merge two overlay maps. We have a historic district overlay map currently, and we have a harbor district overlay map. And we felt merging that into just one map called the historic and harbor overlay map would be essential and useful to us and clean up some confusion. We also felt the inclusion of a description of the bounds within the document, within our zoning ordinance eventually, and then definitely into this comp plan process is essential to ensure we don't have this sort of confusion in the future as to what has been mapped to certain designations. So that is why you've seen this today. It is not adding anything new. It is just trying to reflect what has been on record for some time and formally incorporate this into our town votes at this point.
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners to the zoning administrator? Do we have any public comments? All right.
I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing on this portion dealing with the historic overlay map and the associated text amendment that describes the property in section 8.3.
I'll second. Okay, we have a motion to amend. No, I'm sorry, to close the public hearing. And a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Can I get a motion from town council to close this motion?
Aye.
Opposed?
All right, the next section are a bunch of zoning text amendments. I guess I'm going to have to read all these. So please bear with me.
Yeah, it's.
So first one is C, zoning text amendment, 2022-02 application from the town of Cape Charles to amend section 3.2 district regulation, single-family residential district, R-1. It's I-development standards, Bowleg 6, delete the following. Vinyl siding will be permitted as long as each individual clapboard is no wider than 5 inches. Section 3.6, district regulations, commercial district C1. F, redevelopment standards, i.e., delete the following, or vinyl siding. D, zoning text amendment, 2022-03 application from the town of Cape Charles to amend section 8.3 inventory of landmarks and contributing properties established as follows. The town of Cape Charles has established as part of this ordinance a map covering the area included in the historic district based on the criteria set forth in this ordinance and fully described within section 8.3 as described in zoning map amendment 2022-02 and further contained in chapter 1 of the newly revised historic district guidelines as adopted by the town council on the date to be inserted. And this map shall be as much a part of this ordinance as if fully described herein. Pending further amendment of this ordinance, the period of significance for the town will be from 1883 to 1964 as delineated in the Cape Charles Historic District National Register of Historic Places amended in 2019. Said listing as prepared in 2019 of all contributing and non-contributing properties will be attached as an exhibit to the newly revised Historic District Guidelines as identified in the National Register. Structures on site or sites designated as properties which contribute to the historic character of the town shall be known as contributing properties for the purpose of this ordinance. Structures or sites not designated as landmark or contributing properties shall be known as non-contributing properties. Should a building or structure within the boundaries of the historic district not be listed in the National Register, the building or structure will be classified as non-contributing. The map will be amended from time to time in the same manner as the zoning district map. E, zoning text amendment 2022-04, application from the town of Cape Charles to amend section 8.4, application of the district, relation to other zoning districts, to add to the end of the paragraph the following: where the overlay district and its design guidelines present stricter standard, the stricter standard prevails pursuant to Code of Virginia Section 15.2-2306. F, zoning text amendment 2022-005, to amend section 8.8 Historic Board terms by adding the following: the members of the Historic District Review Board shall be appointed by the town council. The membership shall consist of 5 citizens, at least 3 of whom shall be residents of the local historic district. Said appointments are at the will of town council. G, zoning text amendment 2022-06, application from the town of Cape Charles to amend section 8.14 E, Historic District Review Board powers and duties, to insert the month and year of the newly revised Historic District Guidelines once adopted by town council. H, zoning text amendment 2022-07, application from the town of Cape Charles to delete section 8.20 design guidelines, recommendations for review items since guidelines have been included in the newly proposed guideline. I, zoning text amendment 2022-08, application from the town of Cape Charles to amend section 8.20A as follows: the Historic District Review Board shall be guided in its decisions by the design guidelines, but must also use independent judgment and discretion to consider the unique characteristics of each request. The board is expected to work with each applicant to assist them in achieving their goal while preserving the character of the district. The board and staff shall utilize the pre-application review process as defined in section 8.25A. Item J, zoning and text amendment 2022-09, application from the town of Cape Charles to amend section 8.25A as follows: pre-application review. Persons considering action that requires a certificate of appropriateness as set forth in this ordinance are to review the fully proposed application and scope of work with planning and zoning staff prior to submitting a completed application for a certificate of appropriateness. The purpose of said review with staff is to review the design guidelines and standards and the procedures for obtaining a certificate of appropriateness. Neither the applicant nor the zoning administrator, staff member, shall be bound by any informational meeting or conceptual review. Item K, zoning text amendment 2022-10, application for the town of Cape Charles to amend section 8.29 certificate of appropriateness as follows. Any certificate issued pursuant to this article shall expire of its own limitation 6 months from the date of issuance if the work authorized thereby is not commenced by the end of such 6-month period. And further, any such certificate shall also expire and become null and void if such authorized work is suspended or abandoned for a period of 6 months after being commenced. Any period or periods of time during which the right to use any such certificate is stayed pursuant to this article shall be excluded from the computation of the 6 months.
Thank you for reading all that. I won't go into detail on each one. Suffice it to say, we've also been working on another major document for the town, our Historic District Design Guidelines over the last year plus. As part of that, which are going to the Town Council at their December 15th meeting for consideration of adoption, we have a series of zoning amendments that needed to be proposed at the same time to keep us consistent with those guidelines. So they're all before you this evening. There may be one or two more that'll come out in the next month or so as we're doing a final tweak and revisions. I will make one correction. I crossed out the wrong word under agenda item I. We're trying to make the process of review an optional one with staff, the pre-application process. So I crossed out the word may and highlighted shall. I meant to reverse those. This is meant to be an optional consideration process for us to utilize.
Okay.
So with that said, as you went through the guidelines that have been public for well over now 2 months as well, all of these changes are reflected in the guidelines. The biggest one I wanted to touch base upon, because I think it might get the most reaction from the public, is the vinyl siding deletion. This has been in conflict for many years now. We were saying vinyl siding was not allowed under our historic district guidelines, but it was allowed under the zoning ordinance. So we had continual conflict over that, so we're trying to clean that up. It doesn't mean that vinyl siding can't be considered. We have built in a process for what we call alternative materials under the guidelines, and if it can survive that review process for those alternative materials, then it's a potential that vinyl siding could be one of the options of material choice. It doesn't mean it's completely prohibited from the district at large, but there is now a process outlined under the guidelines to deal with alternative material considerations, and that's where vinyl siding would be reviewed under. So if you have any specific questions about all the rest of these changes, I'm happy to entertain them. We reflect the date of significance does not change. That was actually adopted last year by this council. And in addition, we also recognize that there's been an updated inventory that picked up a lot more of accessory structures. We're going to now reflect that document and actually place it on our website and have it as a point of reference within the document as well into the guidelines. So it's easier to locate if you have a contributing structure or non-contributing structure, even for the house alone, as well as any accessory structures. So those are the significant changes. All the rest are procedural changes that help us move things through the system administratively, and we welcome feedback on these. But thank you very much.
Do we have any public comments on those?
Make a motion that we close the public hearing on the series of zoning text amendments.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Close the public hearing. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Close our portion of this public hearing. So moved. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Mr. Chairman, can we go ahead and,
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you, council members. Appreciate it.
can I get a motion to, Chairman, All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you all.
Do we have any citizen comments? We have no unfinished business. New business. A, Comprehensive Plan 5-year update. Proposed revisions to the comprehensive plan. See item 4A above, which we had a lengthy discussion about. Review and make a recommendation to town council.
If I may, just for a minute. While we still have members of the public here for a second, I would like to clarify several times it was stated during the public comments that we are looking to rezone property on Randolph. We are not. The future land use map is a land use designation, not a zoning designation. So I just want to make that clear for everybody here. We are not proposing to rezone anything. Yes, are we indicating, signaling to the community at large and to the public at large that we would be receptive to some commercial consideration of the side streets from Mason to Randolph. It doesn't mean we can't debate this tonight and see if we can make some revisions to that recommendation as to what should be colored on the future land use map, but it is not a zoning change at all. Sorry.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you. All right. Discussion.
Mr. Chair, what I'd like to do is propose a motion to, this is just me talking, I'm not doing a motion yet, to propose a motion to adopt the recommendation to town council for the comp plan. And then we can go through a series of amendments to that for specific changes within the document that we have in front of us.
Okay.
Is that acceptable, Katie, from your perspective?
So you want to put a motion on the floor
As-
and allow amendments to be made
Right,
to that motion?
right.
Sure.
Right, and then this way, each amendment can be discussed discreetly and agreed upon.
Right.
One way or the other, okay?
Yep.
All right, so, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we recommend to council to adopt the Town of Cape Charles Comprehensive Plan dated November 23rd, 2022.
Okay.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to,
All right, we can't
the
vote
top
on it,
count.
but we have
yeah.
a motion on the table that's
Right.
now seconded.
Any
Any
discussion?
discussion on it?
I think I'd just like to make a comment that we had a meeting in which numerous amounts of suggested changes were made, and what had happened is those comments were all taken seriously and reflected in this new piece of work. So it wasn't just to check a box that we did that, you know, they really did, I thought, a very fine job of, and there's a lot of work involved in doing those comments too, so I'd like to at least include that comment before we go on further too.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion?
I have-
Comments?
I have two comments. One, just to make note that in the document itself, we refer to a new harbor master plan to be created. And as we were preparing this document, we realized the 2006 master plan and design guidelines needed to be archived and a new plan to be made. So I just want to be crystal clear that those are considered now archived documents, and that will go forth with a strategic activity in the future to create new ones for the harbor. The other comment, the historic district existing land use map shown on the page, just saying it's correct, and we'll have further discussion when we get to the map, when we get to the zoning text amendment for the overlay map. Comment I had on page 30, Katie, we had talked about public input, adding a sentence or two with regards to your meeting on future land use. When we had a forum in here, we were going to address that as part of public input process. And I didn't see that. Right now, that section is left with this public hearing that will be filled in the blanks there. But we had agreed that we would also reflect the Coffee with Katie meeting.
We ended up tweaking that last sentence, so if you look under comments under draft comprehensive plan, on page 30, that last sentence is the
Okay, good, okay.
That's how we reflect.
All right, good. Page 149, the very last page, again, has the master tree plan as an appendix, and we had talked about providing a web link in it.
The URL in there, yes.
Right, so I guess right now I'd make a motion, amend the motion that on page 149, that we provide a computer link for the master tree plan.
So he's making a motion.
I'm making a motion.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
But what he's talking about is a URL.
Just just that.
Yep.
Page 119 and 122, on future land use, we have described historic district mixed use. And yet, when we go on to page 122, the header is historic downtown mixed use. So we gotta pick one or the other.
Right.
I'm sorry, I missed that. I was.
Okay, page 119,
We got it.
okay? Which one are we gonna pick? That's my
Yeah,
question.
right.
And I'll make a motion to, we go that route.
Which one should we pick?
Historic district.
Yeah.
Mixed use. Historic district, mixed use.
Yeah.
All right, historic, I'll make a motion that on page 122 reflects historic district mixed use on the header.
Right.
Got a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for historic district mixed use. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, last but not least, to address comments that we received tonight with regards to Randolph.
Corner lots.
And I thank Ms. Perry for her letter that we got ahead of time, because it got me thinking this morning. I did some walking and checking the particular corridors, and yeah, I'm not in agreement that we should extend the mixed use out to Randolph. And what I'd like to propose, and let me just state it for now, and then I'll make a motion, we have existing residential premises on those particular side streets right now. And in my mind, they should stay R1, residential.
Right.
Okay? The existing lots that front Randolph should remain historic district residential. So those are the two things that I want to propose as a motion, and then we can open it up for discussion along those lines.
I think that makes a lot of sense, Paul.
I do too.
All right, so
Yeah.
let me make a motion. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and another thing is, they will have a Randolph address on them too. That's another way of separating which street they're on.
Well, we don't want businesses opening up and then having a sidewall on Randolph, okay?
Right.
It look bizarre.
Yep.
So what I'd like to make a motion is for a future land use map on our side street corridors that existing residential properties remain historic district residential, and that existing lots fronting Randolph remain historic district residential.
Second.
Existing lots or existing vacant lots?
Existing vacant lots.
Okay. Second.
Okay, so
So it's,
the way we're currently zoning it,
It's-
the
it's-
important thing here.
They're officially being
not
grandfathered,
zoning.
basically. Yeah,
not zoning.
Not
Not zoning.
So, okay.
right.
So it's existing lots that are, that front Randolph
Right.
would stay historic district
Residential.
residential. Those, and then,
As well as the vacant
as
lots.
as well as the vacant lots.
Right, and the other aspect, if a residential unit is R1 right now, I don't see any reason that we should make it available for commercial in the future. Residential is residential.
All right. So, did we have a second?
Yes, twice.
Okay. So, we have a motion and a second.
If I may, just before you go, just
Go ahead,
so
go
everybody's
ahead.
clear on this.
Go ahead.
I wasn't going to vote yet. I was going to go to open the discussion.
So if I may, just so everybody's understanding this, this is only the future land use map. It's a
Right.
land use designation.
Right.
There are approvals from town council that have rezoned some parcels that front on Randolph to commercial now.
Have they been implemented that way? Have they been approved and,
I'll be honest, I don't know the exact answer to that, Dennis,
Because-
without knowing. Because I look over here to your existing zoning.
Right.
You're going to see that there are some that go that way. So I'm going to look at, it's Bo Yang's building. I can't think of. Strawberry. Thank you. Thank you.
so-
That's one that I can think
That's
of,
a-
over on Strawberry.
That's,
So I'm
Yeah,
just
I'm not-
making you aware, for the public that's still here, there is already some approved zoning from this town for some of that residential property that fronts on Randolph to have been rezoned commercial.
And I'm not looking to revert that.
Right. I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that we're not changing existing approved zoning that has occurred on Randolph.
we don't have the
No.
power to do that?
No, you don't.
But I think what we are saying is that we don't want to see future
You don't see
lots
future expansion
at
of
those
said.
Right,
corners to go
right.
commercial.
Right,
Okay.
right,
Okay.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
any further discussion?
Not discussion, but comment. Thank you, Summit and Design.
Oh, absolutely.
We really appreciate
All the work
the
you
heavy
did.
lift that you then took on from our heavy lift.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes, thank you, absolutely,
Finish that.
yes.
Yes. Okay, so we have a motion, we have a motion, we have a motion and a second on the table here.
There's some more comments I think are coming.
Do you have comments
Just want
on
to
this?
make sure I understand this clearly. In spite of this motion that we're about to probably approve, there could still be a piece of commercial property on Randolph in that corner there due to some previous action that may be completed before this goes.
They have been completed. They were done some time ago. And when I say sometimes, years ago.
But-
The corner of Strawberry and Randolph is a particular example because I happened to look that up very recently about that vote.
The motion on the floor is existing residentially zoned,
Not
Whatever.
zoned, Not zoned.
I'm sorry.
Land use
land,
designation.
okay, thank you, land use, yes, good point. Land use designation, it was, where they are residential, they remain residential.
Yes.
That was the crux of that,
It's
that,
saying that the town's vision for that area
Right.
would like it to remain residential.
correct, right,
That's our
right,
vision.
right.
And I think this is important because fairly recently, we took a lot on Randolph, 238, which was a residential lot.
Yep.
And we made it commercial.
Right,
And I think that we need to put out there that it is not the vision of the planning commission
Right.
that we continue that kind of action.
it's a true one-off. Yes, yes.
Okay.
Alright.
Anything, comments, discussion? All right,
So we've approved that?
no.
No, we haven't voted
We
yet.
have to vote.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Outstanding, thank you, Paul.
The last thing I had was the Civic League brought up
Yeah.
the roundabout. Bill,
So,
if you can
okay,
talk to
so
that?
yeah, let me talk about that. That's been, I've been on the planning commission for since 2012, and that was on VDOT's books at that time, to look at, to investigate that, and it's always just carried forward. And, you know, it was brought up for discussion at one point in time, and it was like, first of all, it would have to be a minuscule roundabout to even put it in because of the flow of traffic. So,
Property.
you know, the crosswalk thing, I wasn't aware that the town council had approved crosswalks there yet. But I know it was in the crosswalk study had the crosswalks there. So, but it basically, that was supposed to be a calming addition, so we didn't have people going vast speeds right there at a very important intersection. So, but, I mean, I guess what we could do is we could tell VDOT, we don't want, town council.
Well, I think it's important for us to come to an agreement, either going to perform a study as outlined in there or not. Our intention during this development, we didn't carry that through as a
No,
project that we are going to pick up.
right.
It's something that's in the VDOT
right,
document, but that we weren't going to
Right.
press forward to that.
that's correct.
Right.
That's correct.
This may be, maybe something to come back to later if the railroad property is ever developed and a road continues across rather than using the hump, there may be a need for something at that point in time, but that's nowhere near now. And not something that we need to, I think, to actively.
Another reason for the crosswalks was to allow the people on the properties east of Fig to have a safe way to get to Rayfields in that way.
Right. Okay, so I don't know what our options are here, because we can just exclude that, but that's what, it's in
Well,
the
I think,
plan.
yeah, it's in the plan. I think
just
just
have to-
the
we have to-
sake of addressing a public comments, we're just saying, we don't feel that we should be going ahead with that as part of our
That's-
strategic plan, capital
Just keep in the
capital
record.
plan.
Yeah, I agree.
And maybe the potential amendment you should make to this, because it is part of the regional long-range plan that was crafted by the ANPDC as part of their 2035, I think that's the number it says in here, regional long-range transportation plan, is recommend to the town council that we put on record with them that we would like that amended and remove the consideration of the roundabout.
There you go.
That's what I would recommend as this proposed amendment.
Thank-
All right,
thank
so
you.
Get it off our
That's why
books.
that's why you're,
That's why you're there.
right, that's right.
So I'll make a motion that we propose to town council that they approach VDOT for amending their paperwork relative to roundabouts and the fact that the town doesn't want this study performed.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
Second.
We have discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
There we go.
So that's going to be forwarded to town council.
Right, right.
What, anything else?
No. The only question is, just for the sake of public comment here, VDOT has not yet provided comments, which they're required to do
Right.
on our section. If you can just say what is the process for that? Should they get before town council or after?
Yeah.
Thank you for noting that. I did highlight that, I believe, in the staff report, that it's gone to VDOT for their review. It went to Dale Pusey at the local office. He is not the direct reviewer of this. I think it was sent on to another staff person with VDOT. They have, legally, they have 60 days, I believe, from our date of submission, 90 days from our date of submission to them. So I've made a phone call into Mr. Pusey to see if we can
Expedite?
get it done, yes, more timely. I've not heard back from him just because we're coming out of the holiday season, et cetera.
Right, right.
And there's been a couple little bumps along the way in VDOT. But with that said, so if there should be comments that require some alterations to this plan, we will have to bring that forward to the town council and to the planning commission as to what those are. That element of transportation may have to get reopened to do an amendment to the plan itself. If not, if they're not substantial enough, then we are fine if the town council does move forward to adopt this plan.
Okay.
Okay?
So I guess that comes back to our motion on the table that we started with all these.
That's
Big-
correct. So you now have a main motion with 4 amendments. While each of those have individually now been accepted, can we reopen the entire main motion plus the 4 amendments to be ratified by this board as your recommendation?
You want to make that motion?
Well, I'd like to reopen the original motion, considering the four amendments that we had just discussed and voted upon.
Second?
So we have a motion and a second. Discussion?
Basically a compilation of these amendments.
Yeah.
Right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Outstanding.
Unanimous.
Mr. Chair, can I make one more motion relative to and I dwell on this, the harbor master plan? Can we make a motion to have the town staff apply an archive stamp on that particular document that's residing within our documents?
Does that need a motion?
Thank you.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you, Katie.
But I would want to say thank you very much to Summit Engineering and Design.
Yes, absolutely.
You guys were a lifesaver. You came in here right at the right time, and so it's very helpful, very useful. We have a great document. So, and I love you for all the maps.
Exactly.
And it reads well,
Yes,
and
it
it's,
does
and it's
read well.
broken up
Yes.
accordingly, like you mentioned. So thank you to you and your team.
Absolutely.
Great work.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, can we just take a quick 2-minute stand-up stretch?
Yeah, what else we got?
We
got all the
those
other-
amendments.
yeah.
We got 10 more amendments.
Yeah, we're going to take about a 2-minute, 5-minute break. Continuing on, under new business. 8B, Historic District Overlay Map. Reaffirmation of the Historic District Overlay Map, zoning map amendment 2022-02, and to amend Cape Charles zoning ordinance, section 8.3, inventory of landmarks and contributing properties established, to include a new paragraph describing the historic district overlay area, see item 4B above, review and make a recommendation to town council.
I guess a question, are we adopting this as well?
Yes,
Okay, all right.
both the meets and bounds, well, not meets and bounds, the description that was included plus that.
All right, so I'll make a motion, but I want to then amend the motion. I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the zoning map amendment 2022-02 and the associated text in section 8.3 describing the historic district overlay.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second.
All right, so I'd like to amend that relative to the map itself. Katie, the map does not follow the text amendment in the sense of going down Bay. It's correct in the, it's correct in the historic district, in the comp plan. But it's different here, it follows the coast, and the wording in section 8.3 says down Bay. So that line needs to be moved over.
It will be, we've had some issues with.
No, I understand,
When they send me a document and then when I go print it on the large plotter, we're having some formatting challenges.
all right, so that's the amendment I would have, is to move what's shown in front of us from the coast to
Bay
the
Avenue.
actual street, Bay Avenue.
Is that going to go down the center of Bay?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Okay,
It does not include the beachfront, doesn't include the beach at all.
Right.
Right.
We just had some issues with it transposing correctly to us. When I go to print it, when I enlarge it, it's
Yeah, right.
a little funky on me.
Yeah.
Now, you'll get your GIS in pretty soon, your plotter.
All right, so that was the amendment we got to
Okay.
vote on.
So,
Second?
all right. We voting on the amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Now we're voting on the actual,
Original motion.
the original motion, which is the historic district overlay map, 2022-02, and the text amendment changes to zoning ordinance section 8.3.
So moved?
Well, we have
No, we already have
Oh,
it. That-
okay. That's
So,
fine, that's fine.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's done.
Good.
8C, zoning text amendment 2022-02, vinyl siding deletion in the district regulations. Review and make a recommendation to council.
I'll make a motion that we adopt zoning text amendment 2022-02 relative to vinyl siding removal.
Second.
Any discussion on this? We have a motion and a second on removal of vinyl siding in the district regulations. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 8D, zoning text amendment 2022-03, date of adoption of new historic guidelines, and add 2019 inventory of contributing and non-contributing structures. Review and make a recommendation to town council. So that one's the one that we have to wait until the date that they're,
Well, I think what we're saying is we want to to make sure that we put in the date when that
Right,
occurs.
right, right,
So you're recommending that, and so when they hopefully vote
right.
on December 15th, that date will be inserted.
Yep.
Second?
Well, Mr. Chair, I'd
Oh,
like
go
to
ahead.
make a motion to adopt zoning text amendment 2022-03 with two grammatical changes. All right, under the first insert, it says, "and fully described under within section 8.3." I think under should come out. All right, and the other one is the second insert where we said listings as prepared, as identified in the National Register, period, and start a new sentence, structures or sites designated. It's two sentences
Where
run
is it?
together.
Where is
Yeah,
that? Where
I'm,
was
All right,
that?
so if you go to the second insert where it said listings
Yeah,
as prepared,
right.
that sentence should end, historic district guidelines as identified in the National Register, period.
Okay,
And then start a new sentence, structures or sites designated as properties who contribute, blah, blah, blah.
okay, got it.
Okay? So that's my motion, to accept with those two grammatical changes.
Okay. I'll second.
Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. 8E, zoning text amendment 2022-04, prevailing document between ordinance and guidelines. If there is a conflict, review and make a recommendation.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd like to recommend approval of the zoning text amendment 2022-04 as presented.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second about approving zoning text amendment 2022-04 as described in 8E. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 8F, zoning text amendment 2022-005. Is that supposed to be right? Is that 005, not 05?
05.
Should be 05.
Should be 05.
05, Historic District Review Board appoints,
that should be appointments. Right?
Yeah, it should be
appointments
appointments, yeah.
are at the will of the town council. It's
Yeah.
all right, it's what it says up here.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we accept zoning text amendment 2022-05.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor of approving zoning text amendment 202205. Any
With the
discussion?
noted changes.
Or there's really no change. There's not, that was,
Yeah, okay, got it.
yeah.
No problem, okay.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 8G, zoning text amendment 2022-06, insert date of adoption of newly revised historic district guidelines once adopted by the town council. Review and make a recommendation to town council.
Make a motion that we recommend approval of zoning text amendment 2022-06, inserting at a later date the guidelines approval date.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, zoning text amendment 2022-06, on inserting a month and year to the new revised historic district guidelines once adopted by town council. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. 8H, zoning text amendment 2022-07, delete section 8.20, design guidelines recommendation for review items for new infill construction and non-contributing structures since guidelines have been included in the newly proposed guidelines. See 4H above, review and make a recommendation to town council.
I'll make a motion that we adopt or recommend for adoption zoning text amendment 2022-07 relative to the deletion of paragraphs D and E in section 8.20.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to, for zoning text amendment 2022-07, recommending deletion of D and E. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 8I, zoning text amendment 2022-08 to amend section 8.20 Bolegs A for pre-application process to be optional. C4I above, review and make a recommendation to town council.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we request town council approval of ZTA 2022-08, noting the change that the board and staff may utilize
Right,
and strike
Right.
out
yep.
the shall.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on zoning text amendment 2022-08, noting that the board, noting the change, the board and staff may utilize the pre-application review process as defined in section 8-25-A. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 8J, zoning text amendment 2022-09 to amend section 8.25 Bolegs A, detailing the pre-application process, C4J above, review and make a recommendation to town council.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we request town council approval of zoning text amendments 2022-09 with the revisions to the pre-application process.
Second.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second on zoning text amendment 2022-09 on the pre-application review process. As changed in,
Just deleting that.
no, it's also adding. So. As presented.
Okay.
As presented.
Okay.
That's good. That's why you're there. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Now, on 9, there is a typo.
We haven't gotten there yet.
That's, yeah, this is what we just did.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And then add this,
Where's the typo?
on the administrator and/or staff member, that slant should be in there, and it looks like it was removed. Up above, it was administrator/board members,
Right,
and it changed to administrator/staff member.
right. I couldn't tell if that's,
Yeah, if you look close, it looks like the
Yeah, maybe
dash,
that
the slant
dash
is crossed out too.
yeah. So that slash should be in there, the forward slash.
Did you catch that, Tracy?
Okay.
Okay, okay.
All right. Okay, 8K, zoning text amendment 2022-10 to amend section 8.29 regarding expiration of certificates of appropriateness. See 4K above, review and make a recommendation, town council.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to have the Planning Commission recommend to Town Council approval of ZTA 2022-10 relative to the revised expiration of the COAs.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second on zoning text amendment 2022-10 on the revision of certificate of appropriateness on the time period. Any discussion?
Yes. I would like to just make sure we all understand that, especially in the point of determining whether work has been suspended or abandoned, that requires a person to do that work. So that is staff time that will be taken, important staff time that will be taken up. But we have to remember that that's going to be a big job, especially as we look at the amount of construction that's occurring, that someone is going to have to go out and keep track of all that information.
Well, you're doing that today, you're just not doing it as frequently.
That's true, that is my current job.
And we passed the notice out to neighbors who are our eyes and ears
right.
out in the community.
Yes, right, right.
All right, any other discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Good, thank you.
I think we're missing an item on this agenda.
No, it's not. What is it?
Okay,
What?
elections.
No, it was in her report. You didn't read the report? She
There's
said
only-
because we have two new members coming on, she thought we'd
Okay,
hold off
that's
until
fine.
January.
That's fine, that's fine, okay. All right,
I thought the same thing, and then I
All right.
saw her staff report.
Actually, you have two members coming on, you have one departing as well.
yes, right, yeah. Okay,
So, report of officers and committees. I do want to, for those of you that are not aware, the two new members that will be joining the Planning Commission, one of them is here.
Both of them are here.
Okay, sorry. Shannon Smith and Bill Ashworth.
outstanding,
So, thank you for both being here.
right,
Thank you for volunteering.
yeah.
Big job, you'll find out real quick. So, but thanks. So that's, anything else? And I don't know, only one council person can be on the board, so
Yeah.
that decision will be made, I guess, in January. So hopefully it'll be to the satisfaction of all concerned. So, standing staff reports.
Whether you like it or not, that's what you wonderful anyway. So yes, in my staff report, a couple items in the subdivision agent section. I just wanted to make you aware, these three lots which are on fronting on Washington, corner of Strawberry Street, under our ordinance, we allow for each lot to remain as is an individual lot, but can be developed as a whole. And this one had been. However, most recently, this property a large parcel, and the garage lot becomes a self-standing lot on its own, and it will be sold. And we've already talked with the new owner of that lot and her development plans, because there will need to be a house. Otherwise, that garage remains as a non-conforming, legal non-conforming structure on the lot until we can get a house to support it. Okay?
So the house, that was my question, the house is going to retain the existing
The house
garage?
will contain the backyard and that little shed.
Shed.
That little shed building, so
No,
Yeah.
I'm saying on the part that they sold.
So yes, the garage, the plan is to still keep the garage, most of that driveway will go away to
Yeah.
allow for the
Okay,
house
okay.
to be
Right.
constructed in compliance with all the setback requirements. Yes.
If I could just add one other thing to that, in that division, it turns out that we needed to add 1 foot of the combined lot into
right.
the new lot on its
Right.
own, because
The garage is sitting just 1 foot over the property line, which is why you don't do this.
it was quite the maneuvering to make it all happen.
1 square foot. Well, really 1 foot.
So we have no hearings filed for the BZA for this month, so we're good there. As we noted this evening, historic district guidelines do not require under state law that actually have a public hearing to you as a body. So they're not a zoning ordinance, they're just a guideline document. Town council by our local ordinance does require that to have a public hearing, and so that we will actually hold a public hearing on December 15th. And again, we are hopeful that they will take positive action in the adoption of those guidelines. And I guess as part of that, I just want to put the note out, we've done tremendous work this year. And I really commend this body and all of the various meetings we've held to get both the guidelines as well as the comprehensive plan to the point that we got it in a year. I think we've done really good work. I commend Tracy for her efforts. I commend Ken in his role over here, working in the department to help us move this forward. There's so many people, and of course, the town council, they were heavily involved in this. And the Historic District Review Board was instrumental on the guidelines in particular. So I just really want to commend, this has been a tremendous amount of work this past year from all of us here, and I really thank you guys for all of your effort to do this. Most people don't assume it's the work of the planning commission to do that sort of heavy lifting. It is, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much. So with that said, moving on down for our other reminder, we made you aware we've been talking with the developer about a workforce housing project. We are rapidly moving this forward. I have just about signed off on what would be the draft PUD ordinance document that's coming. And so Mr. Marine will be making a full conceptual presentation to the town council at the December 15th meeting. I would urge you, welcome you all to attend if your schedule accommodates as such, because I am anticipating that town council will eventually be kicking this off to go into the public hearing process, both from the zoning text amendment status, zoning map amendment, and some other revisions that are coming your way to look at this workforce housing project. It's exciting, and we are glad that we are in partnership and moving this forward as quickly as we can. Again, we're not rushing it through, but we are doing our due diligence through this process, but we also recognize we'd like to move it forward as quickly as possible, because this is a much needed need in this community.
So really, the presentation to town council will just invoke them to say, hey, planning commission, this is what I want you to look at.
The intent is that they will take votes that trigger moving the
Right,
zoning
okay.
ordinance considerations, zoning map amendment, over to this body to start your public hearing process. And then, with that said, I know as you've all read every word of my report, yes, we had some vacancies on the planning commission. Yes, and at the time of writing this, they were getting ready to hold those interviews, which they have now done. They have made the selection of 2 appointees for the December 1, at that December 1 meeting. I've already introduced who they are, and we welcome them. We're glad they were here this evening to hear this long effort we had today. In that vein, we have scheduled an orientation session for them on December 28th. So I'll be giving them about an hour to an hour and a half overview of some of the FOIA, open meeting laws, walking them through the comp plan versus all the doctrines that come out of that, like the zoning ordinance, subdivision, wetlands, and a whole slew of stuff. So we're They recognize that we are working on the housing piece. I've sent them that work product to date, and they recognize we still have a few more chapters that we're working our way through, and we hope to bring that back to the planning commission as a whole in January to see where you stand on these potential amendments into the zoning ordinance relative to housing, so that we can then forward them on to Summit to take up and do their massaging, review, and comment on that as well. And lastly, if you didn't see it in the paper, we are advertising. We have 2 vacancies in the department. One is, yes, the replacement of Mr. Buda, who's been serving as our part-time zoning compliance officer. Again, with his election to town council, I've been filling his ears to my issues and wants. We are looking to replace the position. And in addition, we were budgeted for some administrative support services part-time into the department as well. We held off just because we had no time to recruit, well, or train somebody. Now that we are finally completing some projects, we
Breathing
are
room.
advertising for that vacancy as well. So we hope to add some additional depth to the department to help our workload. It is
Great.
not slowed down, believe it or not.
Yeah,
So HDRB is still as busy as we've ever been.
goodness gracious, yeah.
That's all
Okay.
my report.
Katie, has there been any hint of what the, I think it's like a 12-acre tract, right, sort of across from the brewery? What that could maybe become? I know it was sold.
Purchased that, yes, he purchased it coming out of a tax sale from the county. He talked to me, that was more than a year ago.
Okay.
That was the last communication he had. The biggest hurdle for any development of that property is there's wetlands.
Right.
It's not the whole property covered in wetlands, they're just strategically placed to make it extremely challenging to develop.
Yeah.
So I recommended to him that he consult with an engineering firm that specializes in wetlands redevelopment and to see what could potentially be done to make that a more palatable development plan.
Okay,
So I've not heard anything further from him.
okay, thanks. Appreciate it.
All right,
I make a motion, we adjourn, sir?
So, second.
all right. Do we have a motion to adjourn in a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you all.
Yes.
Thank you. It was great.